go. Let's go. Anyone who took a page, it's a shikl quote from the Zohar today. I guess if you learn Zohar, it's the type of thing you have to learn inside. So, it's kedai to look at it inside. As always, the connection to the parsha is readily apparent and glaring. So, let's get there. There's the Zohar. Zohar in Parshas Pinchas. Says the Zohar that Netilas Yadayim Achir Shegazru Chacham Shehem. How much you have to wash your hands? Says the Heilige Zohar. Chamisha Ksharim Shebehem Arba Asar Prakim. 14 Prakim. V'afkach, I guess that means afterwards. Arba Asar Prakim Heim Shel Yad Small. V'heim Shmoin Esrei Prakim. 28. Kinegd Nemar Koyach Havaya. Shehem Shmoina Esrei Oisios Shall Pasuk Rishain Shall Ma'aser Bereshis. So there's 28 words in the first pasuk of Bereshis. Okay, the Eser Etzba'is and your 10 fingers are Roim Zois LaSara Maimarois Shall Ma'aser Bereshis. So in true Kabbalistic fashion, the Zohar teaches us some fascinating nikudais. What are we doing when we wash our hands? We're washing our 10 fingers, which is the Asara Maimarois, the 10 statements the world was created, which are the 9 times it says Vayemer in Bereshis, the 10th being the word Bereshis itself. The Eser Maimarois to create the world. On every hand, we have 14 joints. How do we have 14 joints? We have 4 fingers times 3 is 12. You got 2 on the thumb. You got 14 on your left. You got 14 in your right. You have 28 joints in total, which is the first pasuk of Bereshis. And finally, we have the Asara Maimaris. So we have, when we're washing our hands, we're reminding ourselves of the first pasuk of Bereshis, Bara Lekim Shemaim V'Sa'aretz, creation of the world, and the Asara Maimaris that the world was created. So the obvious question is, why? I don't know if you're allowed to ask a question on the Zohar, because those who learn Zohar don't ask questions, because they understand it. But why, when I'm washing my hands, what I'm trying to remember is the Asara Maimaros and the first pasuk, the 28 joints connected, the 28 letters in 28 words, it says 28 letters. Sounds like more than 28, no? I'm afraid of a lightning bolt right now. It says Shemaina v'esrim oisios shall pasuk rishon. Okay, so I'm going to take the Zohar's word for this one, and I'll let someone who didn't eat cholent count it. So, you want some cholent? So, why, when we're washing our hands, this is what we're remembering. So he says over here something very nice. He says that it's a reminder that everything has to do with Brias Ha'olam, everything has to do with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, everything has to do with, Baruch Hashem, everything has to do with that Hashem created the world, gave the Torah to Am Yisrael, and we're perfecting ourselves in this world. So when we wash our hands, when we eat, again, it's another application of the utilization and the elevation of the physical to the ruchni, to the spiritual. As we're seeing how deep this goes, it's not just washing your hands, it's not just removing the toma, it's not just elevating, but every facet of your hands is connected somehow to the creation of the world, reminding us how Hashem created the world and runs the world. So what does this have to do with Parshas Bamidbar? The answer is absolutely nothing. But Parshas Bamidbar is the 6th week after Pesach, and therefore we're up to the 6th week of Pirkei Avos, which is the final parak of Pirkei Avos. Debatable whether it is part of Pirkei Avos or not. A parak that's known as Kinyan HaTorah. The parak begins, and it always falls out Parshas Bamidbar. Ramei Raimer Kol Ha'iseg Torah Lishma Zeich L'Dvarim Harbe. You learn Torah Lishma, you're zeicha to the following. So what would we assume you should be zeicha to? You should be assumed that you are Talmud Chacham, Rosh Hashiva, Gadol Adar. What does the Mishnah say? Nikra Re'ah, a friend. Ahov, beloved. Oyev es Hamakom, you love Hashem. Oyev es Abrias, you love people. Misameach es Hamakom, you make Hashem happy. Misameach es Abrias, you make people happy. And the question is obvious and apparent. Because you're Isaac Torah Lishma, you're Chaim Kanievsky, you're Eliyashiv, Meiser Feinstein, how do we describe them? We describe them as you're Mesameach other people. We describe them as you're a Reah, you're an Ov. That's the description. A very funny description for he who is the greatest Talmid Chacham. So comes along Rav Twersky in Twersky on Chumash. It's called Twersky on Chumash, not Rav. That's what it's called? It's fascinating. How do the kids let that go? That's so not nice. Yeah. Okay, let's. He didn't have the herring. He didn't have the herring. It says okay. So, anyways, either way, says Twersky on Chumash. Says Rabbi Twersky that the purpose of learning Torah goes a bit deeper than the Torah itself, and perhaps we could say that this is the famous Ramchal on his yahrzeit of Derech Eretz Kodma La Torah, that the Torah is not just there to make you into the Talmid Chacham, to make you into the Gadol. The Torah is there to make you into the Ohov, to make you into the Reah, to make you into the Misamech Zabriyos, to improve you on your interpersonal and physical level. So someone who gets the highest level, yes, he becomes the Gadol Adar, and yes, he becomes the Talmid Chacham. But you know how the Mishnah defines him? He's a lovable person. Someone just told me that last night. He was describing Rav David Feinstein. He said, how could he describe Rav David Feinstein? The words just like this. Such a lovable, such a friendly, such a warm. Rav David Feinstein, that's how you describe him? Yeah, because when you boil it all down, when you become one with the Torah, that is what you become. And of course, we're sitting here a few days before Kabbalah Torah, and we have to realize that yes, we learn Torah, yes, we try to learn, we try to maximize our time. But ultimately, it's not purely only about the Torah that we learn, but it's allowing the Torah to flow over to other areas of our life. Allowing the Torah, allowing the halacha. So when we're washing our hands, what are we remembering? We're not just remembering the halacha. We're not just remembering wanting to get every inch of our hands. You know, it's almost the guy that, you know, he wants to dry every inch of his hands. What does he do? He punches someone in the face to get the last tissue. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, I have to dry my hand. Here. But, you know, what are you doing? Okay, that was an extreme example, but I think other examples we could all conjure up as well. And that is what we learn from this Mishnah, says Rav Twersky, and that is how we could take such a zayir, such a Kabbalistic and deep idea and bring it in to our lives. So he says a story here, an interesting story, as sometimes these stories are, but I'll tell you the story. There was a Rav. It was a Rav of town A. Let's call town A Baltimore. Okay. And he was offered a job, Baruch Hashem, to leave Baltimore. He dug his own grave, what should I tell you? And he was offered a job to be a Rav in another town. Let's call it Passaic. Oy vey. In Passaic. Okay. So now, Baruch Hashem, but now he has to check out Passaic. He's a Baltimore guy. What does he know about Passaic? Problem is, if he goes down to check out Passaic, they're all going to know. And back at home, they're all going to know that the Rav is checking out another community. So what's he going to do? And he's thinking, how could he check it out? So he thinks of a very interesting idea. Brilliant, it's coined. He's going to discreetly travel to the city's cemetery. And he's going to see what do they write about people after their nifter. And by seeing what they write about people, he'll be able to tell. He doesn't know this out-of-town place called Passaic. What does an in-town boy like from Baltimore know about such a far-fetched place? So he's going to go and he's going to read the cities. Don't blame Rabbi Goldwich on. Okay, let's just make sure everyone knows that. So he's going to go and he's going to read the tombstones. Derech Agav, we mentioned, not so pasha to read tombstones. Kasha l'shicha, says the Gemara, if you read tombstones. So why does everyone read tombstones? What's pshat? So the answer is, it depends on how the tombstones are made. They make tombstones nowadays that the letters are engraved in, not engraved out. And that's going to be the chilik. If you go to Eretz Yisrael, you go to the old kvaris, it wasn't that way. They were on top of, they were written on the kever. They want to touch up. That's what the Gemara means, that it's kasha l'shicha. But in a grave where the letters are in, this is what they want to say. But either way, so he goes and he wants to read the grave. Okay, sounds like a fascinating idea. He shows up and he reads, here lies Mr. So-and-so, 4 years old at death. Interesting. He goes to another tombstone. Here lies Mr. So-and-so, 6 years old at death. He goes to another tombstone. Here lies a person 10 years old at death. And he says, what's going on over here? What was there, like some sort of plague? Is there some sort of terrible disease in this town that everyone dies young? So he didn't know what to do, and he forgot about the fact that he was supposed to be discreet and not let everyone know that he's coming. He runs straight into the center of town, straight into BTU and Pesach. He says, what's going on over here? I don't understand. I went to them. I was like, who are you? What are you doing here? Oh yeah, whoops. Okay, fine. But Tachlis, what's going on with the tombstones? And they explained to him the following. They calmed him down, and they said, don't worry. There was no plague. There's no diseases. So what's pshat with the tombstones? He says, before someone is niftar, we sit them down. We have a minhag. We sit them down and we ask him, how many years did you really live? How much time did you waste? How much time did you truly maximize? And that number that he admits on his own, that's what we put on his tombstone. So that's the end of the story. I was wondering, so is 6 years a lot or a little? It sounds pretty catastrophic, unless they're doing it by minutes. I'm not sure. End of story. Adkan Hasipur. Nothing more to add. But what does this have to do with everything we're talking about? It has to do is that the more that we bring, more that we realize that Hashem created the world, and we align what we need to do with Hashem and every facet of our life, we have more of this cognizance that it's not just about the bowl of cholent in front of us, but we're washing for a greater purpose. We're washing for Kedusha, we're washing for Tahira. We're washing and we're remembering that the 28 joints of my hands, the 28 letters in the first pasuk, the 10 fingers, Asara Maimarais, is the more we'll be able to live a life in consonance with that which we are supposed to, and thereby, hopefully, Achar Meya Ve'esrim, be able to write on the tombstone, La'achar Meya Ve'esrim, and we'll worry about this town